Hey guys, it's Zach back with another review, this time of the MouseOne Imperium Squishy. This is the first mousepad that I've tried from MouseOne. I think they have many more in the works, and I'm excited to see what they have based off of how good this pad was. MouseOne reached out to me to review this pad, and I agreed to do so because it was pretty compelling. You can pick this up on their site or on Amazon for 50 bucks, and with that, let's check out some of the properties of the pad. Their website and their sort of mission statement is actually really cool. Here you can see this is a little bit different from other websites, other mouse companies, because they list the static and dynamic friction values right here on their site. This is using a pour-on base, which I'll show you in a little bit. You can see the static friction in the X direction is a little bit lower than that for the Y, and then dynamic is supposedly exactly equal. As I sit here testing it, it does feel like there's a stronger friction up and down. That might just be because I'm not making big sweeping movements and that static Y direction friction is greater. That is a normal characteristic of a pad. I've tried pads with XY that's the same and it threw me off. The K83 just didn't really work for me. It was much closer to a 1-to-1 than normal. There's a higher amount of static friction than dynamic as well, and that is, I believe, because this is sort of suited towards Counter-Strike and Valorant players who need a fair amount of stopping power and control in their micro adjustments to hit those headshots. Another thing that's cool is they have a link here just to learn about what static and dynamic friction are on a mouse pad here on their site. Pros, cons, talks about different types of pads, ratios, pretty awesome, as well as different types of bases. They qualify this as a control pad. It does come in 500 by 400, and they also talk about their squishy pour-on base here as well. Back to the pad itself though, here it looks more square, but this is 500 by 400, so it's much wider than it is tall. You might think the 400 is kind of short. Usually it's 420, so really it's only 20 millimeters. But the problems I have on a mouse pad is too small are with the width. This being 500 is actually quite nice. I think I prefer 500 by 400 to 490 by 420. I might sound stupid, but that extra 10 millimeters really does seem to make a difference here. Obviously, if you gave me the choice, I would choose a 500 by 500 pad, or even maybe 600 by 500 to really get that extra width. But overall, I was satisfied with the size of the pad here. As I talked about before, this has a pour-on base. It's very, very soft. Feels very similar to like an artisan pour-on. It is very, very squishy. You can see the amount of give here. Even like over here on the side, if I take a dongle, you can see the right side of the pad sort of move upward because I'm sinking so deeply into the pad. Lifting up here, you can see the amount of give there is in that pad. I'm pressing directly behind the dongle here. Not the perfect lighter test, but we'll call it good. As many of you know, what that does for you is it gives you a lot more of sort of on-demand stopping power. The normal is what your dynamic friction looks like, but if I press down, this thing slows down to almost half the speed. The amount you can sink into this, even with these like larger pad skates that the IPIG has, for example, is actually pretty impressive if that's what you're looking for. I will say personally, I am someone who struggles with sort of like controlling the pressure. I like to use mid pads with a firmer base because what that does is it helps me keep consistent pressure. Even if I get like tense, I don't sink into the mouse pad as much. It doesn't vary my speed. I like to have the most consistent speed I can have, which is why I've been enjoying glass pads recently. But there are a lot of people who like this, specifically TAC FPS players. So this soft base, definitely squishy, was not a lie when they talked about that in the name of the pad. Beyond that, the surface, very, very well made. Feels very premium. It reminds me of like a 10x OptiGrip, now the Shinrai, but like if you took like 10% of those like slippery speed pad surfaces and infuse it into the Shinrai, and this is sort of what you get left over. There is like a sort of feedback on your skin if you go back and forth. It's not abrasive, but it is textured in that way. I found that also, depending on how much of my hand was on the pad, I could slow down and sort of use that as more control as well, along with pushing into the pad. So you can make this very controlled if you want to, depending on how much hand contact you have. I did not test any sleeves with this. I'm not someone who usually uses sleeves on cloth, nor do I really have sleeves that are meant for cloth. All I have is like a Pulsar ES sleeve, not really suited for that. As far as the properties of the pad go, I know it's awesome that they include those friction numbers on the website, but most pads don't have friction numbers included. So it's not the easiest for us to like 1-to-1 compare them off the rip here. But I was doing some tests against like the Blitz, for example, which is like a slightly faster, like a 10% faster artisan. I have the mid base. This was noticeably more controlled than the Blitz, not nearly as fast. As you can see here, there's a decent glide. This is by no means a mud pad in any way, shape, or form. I could main this in Fortnite, for example. I'd be fine. Like I could get rid of all my mouse pads if you told me this is the last pad I'm using. I would be happy with it. I do prefer speed pads, but this doesn't feel bad at all. Honestly, it reminds me of the speed and control of an Artisan Zero. I do have an OctaGrip here still from 10 to X. Shout out to Azar. It feels honestly very, very similar in dynamic friction. I think the static friction feels a little bit lower on the OctaGrip or the Shinrai, but that's just in my like sort of anecdotal quick test right now. Static and dynamic are definitely quicker on the Blitz. I would sort of classify this pad slightly on like the left slow side of like a perfectly balanced pad. It's the kind of pad where if I pulled out a heat and I was just having a bad day, like my aim felt kind of off, I would maybe switch to this pad and get some more control, sort of rein my aim in. Like for example, I like to do smooth bot on speed pads, right? That's my favorite sort of pad. That's my favorite scenario. I can still score pretty close to my maximum on this if I warm up a little bit, 4 or 5 runs, get it going. Absolutely no issues using this. Another thing to note that the stitching here on the edge is also below the surface, so really just not abrasive at all. Not something that really bothers my arm. Like you can feel a ridge here just due to the thickness of the pad with a very soft base, but it's not abrasive at all. It's very tightly stitched. I don't see really any imperfections on the edge of the pad here. And then lastly, the art. This is the only art that the pad comes with. I do like it because it's not just generic black. It's not just even one color. There's something going on here, right? It's sort of like you took stained glass and smoke and sort of mashed together into this art. I don't love the art. I don't hate the art. It's actually just fine. Like, I have no real complaints about it. It's a color scheme that I do like. It sort of reminds me of like Is It from Magic the Gathering, red, blue. But yeah, that about sums it up for my thoughts here on the MouseOne Imperium Squishy Edition. Again, a 500 by 400 sort of balanced, slight control leaning pad. Very unique art, very soft, squishy base where you can get extra control should you want it. More or less, this feels kind of like an Artisan Zero soft replacement, but with like an X soft base. It's not as squishy. I don't feel like you get as punished using dots on this as you do like the X soft Artisan. I had zero issues with hair. I have pets and hair did not get stuck in this at all, so another big win there for the MouseOne. I just real quick I want to demonstrate one more thing before I go. Like, these are ultralight ice dots on this Ninjutsu 10 non-air edition, and like without much force I can shoot this thing right across the entire pad. So like once you get going, there's a very solid glide on this. Again, not by any means a mud pad, not even really a control pad, more of a slightly control side of balance pad. Very maintainable, sort of like an all-arounder. Use it in TAC FPS, use it in Fortnite. You could probably even play the finals in this no problem. Honestly, with the details they share on their site, the care they've taken in making this pad and their sort of mission statement, I am very excited to see if they go for like a speed pad route or even like a hybrid speed pad. I would love to try that out as well. I've been very impressed with this quality. I guess like the perk of this is it's available on Amazon. It's still $50, so it's by no means cheap. You can go with Matrova, get custom sizes. I think even with shipping it would come in cheaper than that, and they have a bunch of different surfaces. So at a base level, not like the best value pad necessarily, but it's available on Prime. You can get it very quickly. Because of the category of pad that it is, you can sort of just one and done it, call it a day. Good stuff here from MouseOne. Please subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. This is my first pad review in a while. I'll be honest, I'm not very confident reviewing pads unless I do dynamic and static friction testing. I didn't on this because those numbers were already available, but overall, I still enjoy testing and reviewing this. You can also follow me on X at DasherZach. Check out the Mousecast podcast. Join up in my peripheral Discord. And with that, we'll see you.